I do believe that it is. When you think about some of the ramifications of this offseason, and we all know Levante David's lost a step, and I think if he were to decide to retire, that we'd all respect it and understand it. And, there's some of us, I imagine, that might worry about him even coming back because you don't want to see him get to a point where he's flat out embarrassing himself.
Right. I think that's a good point.
And we saw some bad moments last year, right? And more missed tackles than we've ever seen from Levante. Like, he is slowing down significantly. But you still have the storyline this offseason of whether or not two of the greatest to ever play the game for your team, Levante David and obviously Mike Evans as well, and whether or not they're going to be back with your team next year. Now, that to me, Aaron, is not why it's a big storyline this offseason, and it's important to Bucs fans. But it's not why, for me anyways, I believe this is one of the biggest offseasons in Buccaneer history. When you look at Todd Bowles, obviously he is on as hot of a seat, I think, as there is in the NFL. So for him, it's massive. And if it doesn't work out with Todd Bowles, you're starting all over again. And it's probably a complete rebuild outside of Jason Light. But from a roster standpoint, you're really probably blowing this thing up. And I think part of it, potentially, and this is why I think it is one of the biggest off seasons in history and seasons in history coming up, is because if you don't sign Baker Mayfield to an extension this offseason, you let him play it out next year, you could be moving on from Baker as well. And it could be completely transforming this football team. Whereas if things go well over the offseason and you build a winner, you get some pass rushers, and all of a sudden you're really good again, now you're extending Baker and maybe even Todd Bowles, and the whole story is completely different.
When you, Pat, are talking about, and when anyone is talking about, what makes an offseason the most important offseason when you're looking in the entirety of a franchise's history, right? And what I think makes an important offseason is being close.
Yeah.
If you're a team that's not close, unless you have the number one overall draft pick, which is there's a game changer at the number one, which you're taking anyway, unless there's a big decision at that number one pick, like the Bucs had a la Jameis Winston of like, hey, there's two quarterbacks. Well, they're going to go 1 and 2. We got to make sure to take the right one. You can look at the Caleb Williams draft, Jaden Daniels, same exact thing. Mm-hmm. Those for bad teams are very important off seasons, and you can make the argument those are the most important off seasons in franchise history.
Among them, sure, yeah.
When I think of the situation the Bucs are in, they're close. We think they're close. Even though it didn't look it at the end of the season, you have to have the pieces to add to those pieces that make it a complete and important offseason. And when I think of the history of the Buccaneers, I think in the mid-'90s, I think when you draft guys like Warren Sapp, you draft Derek Brooks, you've got guys in that one draft alone. What are we going to do with them?
Franchise changers.
You bring in Tony Dungy. Those are big offseasons. You think about the 2002 offseason. You think about making a push to the Super Bowl. You've got the pieces there. You know you're a step away. What do you need? All right, your quarterback, you got to make sure your offense is better. How are we going to drive that offense? We're going to bring in a coach, another big coaching move. John Gruden. You catch what I'm getting at here? The major offseason, the biggest ones for the Buccaneers, have happened really with some coaching changes. So what can Todd Bowles do to change that, to make sure that he's not part of that coaching casualty going into next season? Whereas this season, an important offseason to get those pieces, a pass rusher. Jason Light, I know Todd Bowles.
Pass rushers.
Right.
Pass rusher. I will never stop saying that. Anybody says a pass rusher, no, they need a bunch of them.
And I know that Todd Bowles' seat is as hot as you made it out to be, one of the hottest in the NFL.
Is there a hotter one right now?
No, maybe
because I think everybody got blown out this offseason.
Maybe
LaFleur is up there.
Like, why? Why would LaFleur be up there with Todd Bowles?
I mean, he was borderline getting fired for different reasons. Obviously, the Bucs didn't win the division title this year, but people are kind of sick of mediocrity in Green Bay. It's kind of like coaching a blue blood program.
Did they not just give him an extension after the season? I swear to God, I thought I saw that because there was talk about whether or not he should go, and then they were like, no, we're committing to him. I thought it was with a new deal, but I could be completely wrong.
Yes, you actually are correct. They agreed to a multi-year contract. So
yeah.
I'd say that would lead to him not being on a hotter seat than Todd Bowles.
It makes it hard almost to fire him, just like we saw with Todd Bowles. The guy, that was the discussion last year. He just got an extension. How do you fire him now? It's the same thing in Green Bay.
Glenn in New York, anytime you have, you're with the Jets and you have as bad a season as they had and a lot of turnover. But I think
He didn't have an interception.
for teams that are good, or it's crazy for a guy that coaches defense. You've got a Buccaneer team that is good. So for Todd Bowles, I think out of the good teams, the better than terrible teams, Todd Bowles' seat is by far the hottest, but that doesn't give a pass to Jason Light. Jason Light's seat's not red hot, but this is we talk about important season coming up for Todd Bowles. Extremely important offseason for Jason Light. We'll hear from Jason Light later this afternoon out in Indy, and we'll play some of those comments for you tomorrow.
So you said that this team is close, and I agree with you. And that's why I think it's such a big offseason, because I think that there are a few times probably in this franchise's history, and you named a couple of them, where there's been a bigger inflection point. And I think what can happen if they're really good next year is for this team to look a lot like it does moving forward, right? Like a lot of the pieces, especially Baker Mayfield, will be in place if this thing turns around next season. If it doesn't, I really think we could see almost a total rebuild here. You're going to try to keep a very good and young offensive line together, but I think outside of that, you could see a lot of change after next season if they blow out Todd Bowles and this team isn't very good. I mean, I'm talking about a lot of change. Vita Vea is getting old. I'm not saying you move on right away, but like there's going to be a lot. There's going to be a complete overhaul, I think, of this football team if things don't go well next season. That's why you have to get much better this offseason.
You're right, and to your point, it's a very kind of the opposite view of it. It's a very different offseason, which to mention another very important offseason, the one going the Tom Brady offseason where we got Tom Brady. Jameis Winston, his contract is up. What do? Looked like him in either way. Bruce Arians wasn't going to go forward with Jameis Winston, so what's the move? You've got, at that point for the Buccaneers, a lot of young guys that were not, like you mentioned, Vita Vea, we're long past that. Those guys have aged. At that point, Jason Light and company were trying to and Bruce Arians were trying to capitalize off of a youthful you had a youthful talent with so much upside and potential. What are we going to do to capture that and win? And they did. That was an important offseason. This one on the opposite end of the spectrum of, hey, what are we going to do at the end of these guys? Because we got some moves we're going to have to make because some of these guys are getting older.
That team had the perfect balance, in my opinion, or close to the perfect balance of what I think you need to be a really good championship caliber team. You have to have a lot of young talent like you just talked about, and like I think the Buccaneers have right now. You also have to have some elite veteran leadership as well, and not just leadership, but performances from those veterans as well. And that team with Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski and until he went crazy, Antonio Brown, like they had those veterans that really made that team great. And I think in a way, that's what this team is lacking.